Character matters.
That's how it is. That's how it's written. I just had a moment before I got up here. Normally I'm ready, I'm focused to preach, but I just saw the sweetest mullet I think I've seen in a generation, and I'll let you guys figure out who that is, but man, it is sweet. Way to go, dude. That just made me proud today. But hey, it's summer. I asked somebody earlier how their summer's going. They're like, oh, my summer? And I was like, uh-oh. And they're like, did you see the weather? And I love that. That's our church. I mean, we're so real. But welcome. If you're new here, I just want you to know our heart is to help people move forward on their spiritual journey. And the cool thing about a journey is it's not so much about where you've been or where you're at right now. It really is about where you're headed. And our heart is to help you move forward toward Christ and with Christ. And maybe the step of faith you need to make in your spiritual journey is just asking questions about faith or getting some of those questions answered. Maybe it's getting deeper in community. Some people are at that point where they're like, man, I'm ready to sign up and follow Christ. And we love helping people make those steps. And you guys saw baptisms are coming at the end of the month, and maybe that's a big step for you. If it is, let your family know. It's going to be a great day. I encourage you to do that. Some of you guys are like, I'm afraid of water. Well, maybe that's why we're being punished with this kind of weather, is because you're afraid of water. We need to have some nice weather around here and embrace it. But let's start off. Let me just pray, and we'll jump right in. Heavenly Father, I just pray that you would open our hearts to what you have to say to us, Lord. Would you quiet maybe some of the craziness in our lives? Would you quiet some of the anxieties and worries that we carry in here, Lord? Would you lift the burdens off of people that we all carry, God? And we're not designed to carry most of that stuff, Lord, and we want to hand it over to you. So would you encourage us? Would you lift us? Would you help our hearts to align and focus on you, Lord Jesus, and bless today in Jesus' name, amen. So I was driving down the road, and I was in a little bit of a hurry because pastors aren't supposed to be late to weddings that they're doing. And I left with adequate time. I just got behind the slowest driver in the world. If you're here right now, we need to have a conversation after. They were driving so slow. It was like 10 miles under, like I'm just like super frustrated. And getting my tempers kind of, I'm like, come on. And, I was about half an hour early to the event, so it was still good, but I just don't like being behind 10 mile an hour under drivers. How many of you guys like being behind that? It drives me crazy. And then I'm coming home, and I met with my family for a little bit, but then I need to get ready for some stuff for today. So I'm leaving home early, and there's tracks I live on the other side of the tracks. And a lot of people don't associate with my family because of that, but we live on the other side. I'm driving, and like a train's like going like this, fast, on the railroad tracks. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's been that kind of a day. And then all of a sudden it just, I'm like, okay, Lord, I'm just going to start praying for tomorrow. Because, if I can't do anything, I'm just sitting here waiting. I may as well pray. And then all of a sudden the train came to a complete stop. And being the spiritual pastor, I'm like, I can't handle this anymore. And so I just reversed and went back to my family and just got a few other things done. But it was that kind of day, and it reminded me, like, character matters, right? Character matters, even when you're on the road. And we've been talking about this idea that character matters, and we've been looking at the tension in our world between the resume you and the funeral you. And that simply is this: the resume you is what we want to put on a resume. It's what we want the world to see. It's what we want people to praise us for, and get accolades for. Here's our accomplishments. Here's what I've done. Here's what I'm great at. Here's what I'm the best at. And we like to put the image of our best in front of other people. And we go to schools, we work in workplaces, we have even families that say this is the most important thing. And what happens, there's this other you, we call it the funeral you or the real you. It's like the you that you want to be remembered for. What are people going to say about at your wedding? At your funeral. At your wedding would be a lot better things. So, but at your funeral, you want to be remembered for who you are. And at funerals, I don't see a lot of people talking or hear a lot of people talking about, their resume and all the accomplishments they had and all these things and the sweet house they had and the boat they had and all that stuff. What I hear more at funerals is like, were they kind? Was that a person who just lit up a room and made other people better than they were without them? Were they generous? Were they humble? Those kinds of things. And so there's this tension in our world. We're kind of told that it's okay, and you actually should exchange some of the real you so that you can get more resume you. You get rid of the character that's most important so that you can build up the image of you. Does that make sense? And there's a tension there. But I'm telling you, I want to accomplish things with my life, but I don't want to trade my character for it. And we define character as being who you are when no one's looking and when everyone's looking. Because it's important that you're the same person when everyone's there and then when no one's there, when no one is looking at you. Are you honest when people are there? Well, that's great, but if people aren't and you're not honest, that says something about your character. So let's not trade this for that. And I think the more we build our character, the more we are ready to accomplish what the Lord wants us to accomplish. And I think that we're built for greatness. I think God wants you to become great. I think He wants you to reach your spiritual potential. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have problems, we don't have brokenness, we don't have sin, but we were destined for eternity. And if that's true, I think God wants to create greatness in you before He completes greatness through you. He wants you to become someone who's worth following before you do something that everyone wants to follow. You guys, does that make sense? And so we've been looking at different biblical stories, ancient stories from the Old Testament that are teaching us how to build the right kind of character, how to not trade this, how to build this up so that when we do something, it's actually worth doing and it's worth following. Now, we're looking at this story today about David. How many of you guys have heard of King David? He's a pretty popular guy, right? This is a popular narrative in the Old Testament. Now, David, in this story where we're going to be picking up, is coming out of obscurity. And David, how many of you guys have friends named David? You guys have friends named David? Most people, it's not, that David's not this David, just to be clear. But David is a popular name because of this guy. This guy, it says in Scripture, was a man after God's own heart. And I want us to pick up his story. I want to actually start at the end of our story, and then we'll back up. And you'll understand why in a little bit. But at the end of the story, where we begin, David has come to a battlefield. And there's a big valley about 15 miles from Bethlehem called the Valley of Elah. And on either side of the valley, on the mountain ridges or hill ridges, is the Philistine army and the Israelite army. It's army facing army, and they've been facing each other for a number of days. They're battling each other for control of the area, and every day that this battle has been going on, it's been more a battle of words at this point. It's been more trash talk. It was kind of like the tradition of the day. They trash talk together before actually fighting, and every day this figure would walk down from the Philistine ridge down to the valley, and he would trash talk the Israelites. And he'd tell them how great he is and how weak they are, and he'd say, "Send out a man to fight me." And the man that would go out every day, his name was Goliath, and he was a giant. How many of you guys have heard of David and Goliath? That's the story we're looking at today. And in this story, every day Goliath comes down, and every day the Israelites are too terrified. No one wants to fight him. And he says, "Hey, if we fight hand-to-hand combat, whoever wins, we'll fight on behalf of the army. So only one person's blood needs to be shed, one life needs to be given." But no one is willing to go fight him because Goliath is a giant. He's 9 feet tall. He's huge. He's got a big spear and sword. He has an armor bearer who carries this huge shield for him. And he's terrifying. He's the best warrior in the area. No one wants to face him. Until one day, a shepherd boy steps out from the ranks when he's challenging, when he's trash talking, with a stick and a sling and a few stones. steps out of the line and walks toward him. And we would pick up in the story here in 1 Samuel chapter 17. And it says this. It says, Goliath in verse 41. In verse 41 it says, Goliath walked out toward David with his shield bearer ahead of him, sneering in contempt at this ruddy-faced boy. Am I a dog, he roared at David, that you come at me with a stick? And he cursed David by the names of his gods. Come over here and I'll give your flesh to the birds and wild animals, Goliath yelled. And David replied to the Philistine, you come to me with sword and with spear and javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of heaven's armies and the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Today the Lord will conquer you, and I will kill you, and I will cut off your head. I don't remember that in children's church. Do you guys remember that? My dad always takes note of that. And I didn't hear that as a kid, but David makes a pretty mean promise there. And then he says, I will give the dead bodies of your men to the birds of the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. David's good at trash talking too. David's got some trash talk in him. Verse 47, and everyone assembled here will know that the Lord rescues his people. The Lord rescues his people. The Lord rescues his people. But not with sword and spear. This is the Lord's battle, and he will give you to us. I love that. He says, this is the Lord's battle, and he will give you to us. As Goliath moved closer to attack, David quickly ran out to meet him. He didn't run and hide. He didn't try to jive and try to beat him with speed. He ran straight at the giant. Taking out a stone, he hurled it with his sling. I don't know if you know about slings, but they're made out of cloth or some kind of animal skin, and they would just start spinning these things. And when they could release them, these shepherds would get so good. I mean, they could hit really small targets, but they'd hit it with such high velocity. It would be well over 100 miles an hour. These things would be moving. And so David runs right at Goliath, launches this missile, and it says he hurled it with his sling, and it hit the Philistine in the forehead. Now, here's the point where I think there's an overzealous scribe who just likes to be descriptive for the sake of being descriptive. He says, attached to that, he hit the Philistine in the forehead. The stone sank in, and Goliath stumbled forward and fell face down on the ground, sunk in. That must have been a grotesque noise that went across the valley. I mean, right? And it gets even better. It goes on to say, so David triumphed over the Philistine with only a sling and a stone, for he had no sword. And then David ran over, pulled Goliath's sword out from its sheath, and David used it to kill him and cut off his head. Now, again, I don't remember that in the children's book story. But David takes the head, and he brings it around with him. It's his trophy. And David slays this giant. And without going into any more of the gory details there, my question for us today is, how does an obscure young man, a boy really, go from complete obscurity, no one really knows who he is at this point? He's never really been trained like the other men do, and he doesn't have a sword like they do. How does someone like him from obscurity raise up to greatness? How does a young, small boy defeat a giant? What were the steps that got him there? How did this happen? I think this has a lot to teach us about character and about how it's built and about who we are. And so what I'd like to do is give you three keys to gaining great character that we can learn from the life of David. Now, the first key is this. We have to jump back in the story to the beginning of David's story, and this is what it is. Saul has been elected king. God has said, hey, Saul will be king. Saul's king for a while, and it doesn't take long. How many of you guys know the story of Saul? Good guy, bad guy. Not a great guy, right? Bad king. The reason was he would only do what God asked him to do when it was easy and he wanted to do it. But when it looked hard, he would do his own thing. And so he had this pattern of disobedience. God gets tired of it. He gets fed up and says, okay, I'm going to choose a new king, Samuel, who's his prophet. It says, Samuel, I need you to go to Jesse, who lives in Bethlehem. He's this older guy who's got a lot of sons. He's like, go to Jesse, and I want you to choose one of his sons. I'll tell you who it is, and he's going to be the next king. So picking up in 1 Samuel 16, verse 6, it says this: when Samuel arrived, Samuel took one look at the oldest son, Eliab, and thought, surely this is the Lord's anointed. His oldest son looks awesome, looks like a leader. Apparently he has just a studly leader look. How many of you guys have people in your life, they're just like studs or leaders? They have it all together. Everything looks great. They're like the leader everybody would choose, right? Well, that's Eliab, and I don't even know if I'm saying his name right, but that's him. And Samuel, who's a prophet, who's been around people, he's like, that's the one. But the Lord said to Samuel, don't judge him by his appearance or by his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord doesn't see things the way you see them. People judge by outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. I love that. People judge by the outward appearance. People judge by the resume, but the Lord judges the heart, who you really are. Then Jesse told his son Abinadab to step forward and walk in front of Samuel, but Samuel said, this is not the one the Lord has chosen either. Next, Jesse summoned Shemiah. Surely it's going to be him. Three's the charm. But Samuel said, neither is it this one that the Lord has chosen. In the same way, all 7 sons were presented to Samuel, but Samuel said to Jesse, the Lord has not chosen any of these. And Samuel asked, are these all the sons you have? Like, he's gone through all these guys. Is it this one? Is it this one? All of them like so hopeful just to have their dreams crushed. Do you have another son? There still is the youngest, Jesse replied, but he's out in the fields watching the sheep and the goats. Now, underline that, circle that sentence. That's really important. We're going to come back to that in a second. He says, send for him at once, said Samuel. We will not sit down to eat until he arrives. So Jesse sent for him. He was dark and handsome and with beautiful eyes. Now, I think that whoever the scribe was when they were writing this, they were like, David, how do you want us to describe you in this story? He says, well, he was dark and handsome and he had beautiful eyes. And moving on, the Lord said, this is the one with the beautiful eyes. Anoint him. Anoint him. This is really important. The first key to building great character from the story of David is about training. In fact, this whole thing that we're going to be talking about is training to gain character. And the first most important training is training in obscurity. Where is David when all his brothers are gathered with his father? It's like out in a field with sheep, with goats. Who's he with? Probably alone. Maybe he's got a partner, but he's probably alone. David's not even there. Like his dad brought that means his dad brought all of his other brothers. He heard that one of his sons was going to be chosen to be king, and he goes, all right, let's get all my sons there, except David, could you stay out in the field? What does that say about his dad's opinion of David? Like nobody would choose this guy to be a leader, at least not on the surface. But God doesn't look at our resume, he looks at our heart. And I love this reality that he's with the sheep. And some of you guys might not know this. David was a writer. If you look at his whole life, he became a writer. He became a musician. He became a warrior. He became a leader. I mean, he had so many skills and so many abilities, unbelievable. But I believe that David formed the heart of a poet, the heart of a warrior, the heart of a leader. I think it was formed, his greatness was forged and formed in obscurity, in a field with sheep. That has something, I think, great to teach us about greatness. I think greatness, if we really want to train for it, we have to realize, we're going to have to train in a field where no one sees and no one watches and no one knows. And guys, we live in a culture where don't we want to be known? And I'm speaking maybe for me, maybe for my generation, but don't we who are millennials and younger, we want to have the home that our parents worked years to have, but we want it now. Don't we want the better car than what our parents have? And surely than our friends have, but our parents have. but we want it now. It took them years to get to that point, but we want it now. I mean, we live in this now, immediate culture where we feel like so entitled, like this is what we need, this is what we want. I want success now. You know, we have you can look up any statistic right now on your phone. You can pull it up. Boom, boom, Siri. You know, some of you guys might be looking up statistics right now. What is the longest sermon ever? You know, I don't know. But we want it now. And we want it to be seen. I mean, we're posting stuff about ourselves. This is my life. This is how great it is. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be sharing with our friends, but sometimes there can be like this urge in us to have what we want now, and we want to have success in front of other people. We want to be seen. We want our resume out there for the world to see. But David's character, his greatness, was formed and forged in the field, in obscurity. I had a guy at this wedding I was doing, it was at the rehearsal, and he goes, hey, man, he was sweating a lot when we were practicing, and he was like, man, it just seems like you're not nervous at all. Did you ever have anxiety when you spoke in front of people and when you lead people? And I was like, dude, I was like so nervous. I love talking with one-on-one. I love in a small group. But one of my biggest fears, one of my biggest challenges as a leader and as a pastor was just getting over the fear of speaking in front of people who are judging me really harshly right now. Like if I fail right now, it's not just in front of my family, it's in front of all y'all and on the internet. Don't judge me. Like that's a little terrifying of a proposition. I said, no, I was terrified. And when we first started Whitewater, it was like in a field of obscurity. My dad's here today. Dad, you remember the field of obscurity of Whitewater? Like no one knew. We were started in a home with just a few families, with a big vision to reach Pierce County, with a big vision to reach people for Christ, but like with someone who wasn't that talented and new at this whole gig and was learning in the field of obscurity. And I remember people put up with me and believed in me, even when I'm learning and I'm young. And I remember one time in Frederickson Elementary School, I'm speaking and I'm like finally getting some confidence, and people are, they are endeared enough to kind of go with me on this, and I'm like getting fired up, I'm preaching, and right in this area, I just hear this, which isn't good, by the way, when you hear that anywhere, and then the splatter of fluid on floor, and I look over, and this baby is looking right at me as I'm preaching my heart out, and it's just projectile vomited, and continuing. And the whole floor, like that, all the chairs were just like, everyone's like running away. And the mom's like just looking at me. And I was just like, my wife runs away. She's terrified of vomit. And that's a whole other story. But like, they don't train you for that in Bible school. I'm just telling you, they don't train you for that. What do? We came from obscurity, but God has been forming and transforming the people at Whitewater. He's been transforming me. This has been a field of obscurity in many senses. And like when I'm with my Bible all by myself and learning how to write a lesson, or learning how to counsel people, learning how to lead people to the Lord, like it takes work. There's a quote from a pastor I like. His name's Bob Merritt. He says that 99% of life is dull and routine. And we want it to be success, and we want it to be fun, and we want everybody to know it. But 99% of life is dull and routine, and it's obscure. It's hidden from people. They don't see it. They don't see the wins. They don't see the losses. When David was, watching sheep, he fought a bear, and he killed a lion, and who saw it? Who knew about that? It was obscure. And like there's people here today, like you are like folding laundry and changing diapers all day, and you're like, I am in obscurity. When's it gonna end? You are like in a nurse training program right now, and you've like stuck so many dummies with needles. You're like, when will this end? And some of you guys are in school. You're like, if I have to write another paper, I'm gonna blow. And maybe there's some of you guys who are in jobs, and like, this is a dead end job, and I'm like, this isn't what I ultimately want to be doing, and I'm kind of frustrated. I don't know fully what I need to be doing, but I know it's not this. I know there's something I need to be doing that's greater than this. I just want to encourage you guys that greatness isn't just happen in a moment. Greatness is forged in obscurity. And lucky for you and me, God looks at our hearts. He doesn't just look at the resume. He doesn't look at like all the warriors who've been doing this forever and have all the training in the world. He looks at your heart, even if you don't have the training yet, even if you haven't gained the skills yet. He sees your heart, and if you're willing, he will train you for greatness. And it starts in obscurity, I'm telling you guys. The 1% is the payoff, isn't it? Think about David's life. He's in obscurity up until the moment that he sees a giant that everybody else is afraid of. Everybody else is terrified of. But he sees it, and he sees an offense to God, and he sees an opportunity. And he steps out with a stick and with a sling and a few stones in his pocket, and he attacks the giant. I think one of the things we have to remember is that training with God is different than trying. Dallas Willard says this. Training is different than trying. Sometimes people come to church and they hear a sermon like this and they're like hearing, I got to try harder, I got to try harder, I got to try harder. But the reality is we are either training to trust God's love or we're trying to earn God's love. And when we're trying, we come to that moment. Imagine David never spent a moment in the field. He never spent a moment practicing with the sling. He never spent a moment like learning to become more than he ever was. And then all of a sudden he sees a giant out in this field. Is he going to step out to take on this giant? Probably not. If he does, he's going to lose because he's not ready. And so many people have been in obscurity and they don't love their job and they're tired and they just want to quit. And that's what happens, or they miss the opportunity. And I am telling you, if you just try harder with your life, but you don't learn how to train with God, you're practicing failure. You're training for failure. Because, you guys watching the Olympics? I'm guessing that any gold medalist or silver medalist or bronze medalist that occurs throughout the whole Olympics, they're not just going to go out there without having trained it all and just try on their own. That's how you bust a really good, hernia, if you do that. These guys have been training and training and training. And what I want to talk to you guys is about training with the kingdom, training with the Lord. And it's not in your own strength. God gave you your body. He gave you your mind. He gave you your abilities, your strengths, your weaknesses. And then God, when we work with Him, we train with Him, and He teaches you how to use the grace He's given you to see more grace happen in your life. Does that make sense? You with me? So, the second key to building great character is training for courage. Training for courage. And I only have so much time here, so I want to land on just a few things, but training for courage is really, really important. Courage defined is the ability to do something that you know is right or it's good, even if it's dangerous, even if it's frightening, even if it's difficult. Courage. I don't think we have enough courage in the church. I don't think we have enough courage in our world. There's so much fear. There's so much anxiety. When people see a giant, when people see something that's hard, we want to run away, don't we? We want to run away. And David sees this giant where all these other men are afraid. In fact, back just a few verses. You don't have to turn there. I'm just going to read this. It says in verse 24 of chapter 17 that as soon as the Israelite army saw Goliath, they began to run away in fright. All these trained soldiers run away in fright and they say, "Have you seen the giant? Have you seen him? Look how scary he is. Look how big he is. He's a big sarcastic giant too. He's mean." And the giant's scary to everybody. They're frightened. But David sees it and he wants to take it head on. Like, we live in a culture where we're afraid to confront others. We're afraid to speak truth. We're afraid to be who we really are. And to say, like, here's where I've messed up and here's like some of the junk in my life. We're afraid like all the time. And I'm telling you guys that character, one of the most important character pieces you could form is courage. That you can train yourself to be courageous. And courage is built one victory at a time. David killed the bear and then he killed the lion. Would David have killed the lion if he hadn't killed the bear? Would David have taken on Goliath if he hadn't killed both the bear and the lion? See, like, courage is built upon courage. It's built one victory at a time. And I want to encourage you guys, even if it seems small and you're afraid of this small thing and you're like, oh, it's okay if I just ignore it. Don't ignore it. Face your fear. Face the giant. We have, my parents actually have this dog named Franco. And for a long time, he still is kind of, he was terrified of bikes and bicycle riders. A bicycle rider would come, and he's this tiny, like, 1.5-pound creature, mainly fur, and a biker would come by, and he would just, like, run away, super scared. Until one day, a biker came really close to him, and he didn't see it. And when it rode by him, he jumped up, and something happened in him, where all of a sudden he got ferocious. And he started chasing the biggest man on the littlest bike you ever saw. And this guy, trying to get away from this thing, this little dog is chasing this man on a bike. We got to face our fears. We got to have courage. You can have all the skills in the world. You can have all the talent in the world. But if you don't have courage, you're never going to face the giant. Like, what if David had all those skills and everything, but he didn't have courage? He never would have defeated Goliath. He never would have been ready for that moment, but he had built up the courage over the years in obscurity and trained himself so that when he saw this giant, it wasn't a giant to him. It was something that was in God's way. And it was something easy for God to handle. Courage means we're willing to face our fear. Courage means we're willing to face our fears with or without others. Maybe we're the first to cross the line, guys, and that's a leader who's willing to cross the line and have courage. I'm going to face this thing. I'm going to speak this truth. I'm going to confront this issue, this person. I'm going to start dealing with this thing in my life. Courage. What giants are you facing? What giants have you been running away from? We live in a world of fear. Just look at the internet. People are so afraid right now. And here's the biggest issue to me. Like, why was David why did he have so much courage? Why was he able to even have the guts and the grit to go after a giant, run right at him with a sling? It was because I think he trained himself to trust God. He trained himself to trust. You show me a Christian who's afraid. You show me a Christian who's anxious all the time about this and that. You show me a person of faith, a person who claims to follow Jesus, who's afraid. I will show you someone who is not walking closely with God. I will show you someone who is walking at a distance. Because the giants get bigger the farther we get away from the Lord. Isn't that true? The farther we get from God, the bigger the giant looks. The closer we are to Him, the more we realize that we're walking with the true giant. The one who created the world. The one who he could win any battle. In fact, that's what David yells. Like, the battle is the Lord's. He will hand you over to me. See, that's where the courage comes from. When we're training ourselves for courage, underneath that, we are training ourselves to trust God. It says in Samuel 16, verse 7, don't judge by his appearance or height, for I have rejected this guy. But the Lord doesn't see the things the way you see them. People judge by outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. In Acts 13:22, it says, but God removed Saul and replaced him with David, a man whom God said, I have found David, son of Jesse, a man after my own heart. He will do everything I want him to do. This is a man after my own heart. He trusts me. He's been training his whole life, trusting me. Psalm 139, written by David, later in his life says this, search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Know my fears. Know where I'm struggling with courage. But point out anything in me that offends you. Don't be afraid. Don't hold back, God. Give me your heart and lead me along the path of everlasting life. If you lead me, I'll take on any giant. I won't be afraid because you're with me. We're either training to trust God's love or we're trying to just earn God's love. And I want to tell you, when we trust Him over and over, your courage begins to build. And rather than reading the Bible or coming to worship and doing Jesus church things to earn approval and to build up your resume so everybody thinks you're great and you're trying really hard, you can never win that. A Christian of faith, a Christian who is training for trust, reads their Bible, and then they pray and they worship together and they lift others up and they walk closely with God because their heart belongs to Him. They're training themselves to trust Him. If you're reading the Bible and you're doing religious things and praying so that you can earn, you're doing the wrong stuff. You need to just trust Him. And your motivation for doing those disciplines and training yourself to have courage with God is so that you can trust Him more and be ready when the giant is in front of you. And my hope is that you would be ready. Let me ask you, where's your heart today? Where's your heart with the Lord? Where's your heart of faith? Are you afraid of things all the time? Are you wanting to quit in your field of obscurity where God's trying to train you for greatness? Like the field with Him isn't good enough. So you're willing to leave it and quit before God's ready building greatness in you, before He completes greatness through you. Where's your heart? I'll finish with this. Saul sends David out to face the giant. In this moment where army faces army, where Israel, the people of God, are facing Philistines who represent some really awful things. In the moment where they're coming together to battle, who is supposed to be facing the giant? Who's supposed to walk out onto that field and fight for Israel? Saul is. The king. But the king won't go out. The king's afraid. He's been trying, but never training to trust God. And that day, the true king of Israel, a young boy, a young man, with a sling and a stick, step out and reveals his greatness. See, greatness wasn't just didn't just go poof and show up in that moment with David. Greatness had been forged in him because he trusted God over and over again. I want you to trust Him. I want you to follow Him. I want you to be built for greatness. I want you to, in those moments, be able to see them and step into them. I don't want you to quit. I don't want you to just miss the moment. I want you to have true greatness in your life. Where's your heart? Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we love You. We're so grateful for You. Lord, I pray that You'd be shaping the character of people in this place. Lord, if there's people struggling with being dishonest, Lord, help them to become honest. If there's people who've been struggling with greed, Lord, would You turn them around and help them to give their heart to You and to trust You, Lord, and would You make them generous? Lord, if there's people who are struggling with anger, Lord, would you teach them to be calm? Would You teach them to be collected, to be patient? Would You train us, Lord, to be ready for the giants that face us? In Jesus' name, amen.